Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for new stories from Yellowcat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. What is your worst neighbor from H story? It all started when our new neighbor put up a fence that extended too far, which forced pedestrians to walk in the street rather than the sidewalk. My dad said something to him, and of course, the guy didn't listen. My dad then contacted the city. This is when it all began. Over the next year, the neighbor got his revenge. First, he placed multiple spotlights outside his house, which went on at 8 p.m. and lit up our bedrooms. Next, he placed a school bell on the back of his house and connected it to his telephone. Every time his telephone rang, it rang. Finally, there was a garage that he technically owned, but it was connected to our house too. When he discovered we were trying to sell our house, he painted the garage neon pink with neon green stripes. He must have known what he was doing because he now owns 16 of 20 properties that were on our old block. He may have been some passive-aggressive genius. I grew up in a rough neighborhood. Rough neighborhoods are kind of funny based on what I've heard from other people with similar experiences, in that you tend to have a really polarizing effect. You have your ghost neighbors, people that never talk to anyone and for all intents and purposes don't exist. You have your neighbors from H, and you have your awesome neighbors that you keep as close to you as possible because in that kind of setting, you need to. The neighbor on either side of the house I grew up in was pretty good. On the right was a ghost neighbor who eventually started talking to us and being pretty cool, and on the left were my godparents. Across the street was a family of meth addicts. 2 doors down from them on the corner was a guy who cooked and sold meth. He had a network of users and sellers all down the street, and near one corner house at every intersection was involved with him. This guy was an effing icon. People in the area called him a number of things. Tweaker Dan was one nickname, the white guy was another. He had a makeshift auto shop in his garage, and he worked on cars from around 5 a.m. until about midnight every day, loudly punctuated by people coming and going from his house to buy meth or shoot the S or whatever. Sometimes he would have loud arguments with people outside, and sometimes he would have gunfights with people he argued with. More often when he went for his gun, people left. Dan rode his bike everywhere. He had a car and it worked, but he generally just rode his bike all over the place. Now, growing up, I just saw him as an S neighbor to be feared and avoided. The thing was, Tweaker Dan was actually a pretty friendly guy. He would wave to everyone, neighbors, anyone who lived in the neighborhood, anyone he recognized really. It wasn't until I was older that I learned a little more about Dan and his operation because of some mutual friends I ended up knowing. Dan didn't just supply meth to the neighborhood users and sellers. Dan controlled a large amount of the local supply chain. There were 2 major gangs in the area, but our neighborhood fell directly in a kind of neutral area between their territories. One gang probably could have taken our neighborhood if they had wanted to. They were big enough and powerful enough, but for Dan was their supplier. They knew him as the white guy, and part of their arrangement with him is that he sold to them, but they stayed the F out of the neighborhood. This was his arrangement with anyone affiliated that he sold to. He would sell to pretty much anyone, but if he dealt to you, you kept your S out of his neighborhood. Don't S where you live sort of thing. Turns out, this is also why he rode his bike everywhere and waved to everyone. Dan was keeping an eye on who came and went. He waved because he wanted you to know he was watching. It wasn't so much that he was being friendly, though he was, but that he was communicating something very important. He was watching. To those of us that weren't involved with him, we didn't know. We didn't know about his rules, who he said was allowed to come and go, the arrangements he'd made that basically kept our neighborhood from getting worse as the city around us turned to S. We only knew about his erratic and peculiar behavior, that he never slept, that he dealt drugs, that he did them. A lot of the clean houses in the neighborhood vilified him, but it was always peculiar to see which houses were friendly with him because it was not always who you'd expect. For a guy who had so much interaction with the meth heads, he was also friends with the prison guard, the family who lived a few doors down, my godfather. People you'd have thought would have avoided him, but they knew. F knows how, but they did. I asked my godfather about it after I found out, and he said, yeah, he knew. He just didn't see it as something that should be talked about. So that's Tweaker Dan, one of the best and worst neighbors I've ever had. I grew up next to a family who was really nice. The grandparents gave them that house and it was perfect. Always made our house and lawn look like crap. The kid in the family was 4 years older than me. Very nice, good in school and whatnot. He started getting into drugs and alcohol around 14. Had a kid, then another and another. The grandfather who gave them the house died, and the house then started getting worse. Not as much lawn mowing or keep up. Old cars started to gather in the yard. If it got stuck, it would just stay there forever. The woman of the house died, then the man. So it was just the 24-year-old, immature, 3 offspring kid living there with his drugged-out, deadbeat girlfriend. We look over there one day, and the gas meter from their yard is gone. This is winter in Ohio, and it can get cold here. Then a couple weeks later one night, we look over and there's not a single light on at all. The electricity had been shut off as well. A for sale sign showed up in the front yard for a single day. Then the house went empty and was foreclosed on by the bank. Caution tape wrapped around the entire house. 6 months later, some U.S. Marshals showed up in my door looking for the guy. They surrounded the house next door and mine. I told them I didn't know where he was and they left. I heard later that they found him and he went to jail for a year. There the house sat, falling apart with caution tape wrapping around it. When someone finally purchased it from the bank, the basement had 6 feet of water in it. Every piece of drywall and interior wall, and even some floor joists, had to be removed and replaced. In 2012, the house was completely redone on the inside and looks amazing. They are the nicest people. I have 2 of them, both living adjacent from me in a very small part of town. One of them is a total loser. He doesn't have a job, never takes care of his area, all he does is stay home and watch TV all day. Sometimes he comes into my place of work, I work as a cashier at a fast food restaurant, and taunts me with whatever BS he could come up with. But he's not the worst. Oh no, it's the other neighbor that drives me insane. Every morning, I can hear his alarm clock go off. It's so loud, it could wake up everyone in a 5-mile radius, and my house is 50 feet away from him. On the weekends, he's always doing some sort of thing outside, laughing loudly and causing all sort of shenanigans with my other neighbor. I want silence, and all I hear is banging, thrashing, yelling, and laughing. Not only is he my effing neighbor, but we work together too. I have to spend 12 hours of my day hearing his annoying laugh and his grating voice. And when the other D neighbor comes in, it's basically H for me. They're both so annoying, so stupid, so uncivilized. They talk about the dumbest things like net fishing and blowing bubbles. Who the H blows bubbles? And he has the most annoying pet. He'll eat all my plants, meow loudly at night, and leave trails of drool wherever he goes. It's effing disgusting. All I want to do is stay home and play my clarinet. My current neighbors are terrible. It is an Indian couple that fight constantly. I have had to go over to their house and ask them to stop because they are loud enough I can hear them in my house. When they are not fighting, they are loudly having S in their backyard. And I get it. It's their yard, they can do what they want. But loudly screaming, harder, harder, F me, is not okay to do outside when other people can hear you. I have kids, and now I have to keep a window open because of their behavior. The woman saw my daughter at the neighborhood mailboxes and told her my wife was an S and other nasty names. I complained to my HOA, who I'm sure advised them to knock it off. About 2 weeks after I complained, the police came to my house and said they had received information that I was dealing cocaine. To top it off, a large section of the fence between our properties is falling over due to a tree on their side of the fence having a branch growing into it. They refuse to cut the branch and also refuse to help pay to repair the fence. It has gone on like this for almost a year. I am moving in 6 weeks. I used to have a neighbor that would constantly throw trash over their back fence into my yard. Did it all the time. During the summer, I would go out to the shed in the back and find the most random S, like a ripped open stuffed animal, used diapers, etc. I started throwing the trash back over, but it kept coming back no matter how much I battled it. The D-bag teen son would work on his car in the driveway and blast music all day long. They also decided to have a basketball hoop in their driveway that they eventually took down. They discarded the hoop and backboard in our front yard off to the side like we wouldn't notice. I kept pushing it back into their yard against the same fence they kept throwing the trash over, but it kept somehow finding its way back into our yard. They were truly neighbors from H. They eventually moved away and all the problems cleared. My neighbor at my parents' house had OCD for sure. He would mow and leaf blow his yard every day. Every single day. If it rained, the second it stopped, he would go out there and mow and leaf blow. He would leaf blow his roof. Then he would leaf blow his cars. Then wash his cars. Every day. He either had OCD or hated his wife. He never talked or waved to anyone either. Strange dude. The neighborhood kids did super glue a leaf to his driveway. I wish I was there to see his reaction. Just to add a bit to clarify, it wasn't like this guy was obsessed with his lawn. In fact, it really wasn't all that nice. He would actually mow it every day. I have seen people always outside gardening an S, but he just mowed and leaf blew every day. There had to be days where the blade of the lawnmower didn't even touch the grass. He would leaf blow the yard despite nothing being on the lawn. It would seriously have been faster for him to just walk over and grab the 4 or 5 leaves that would be on his yard on a given day. My family just always dealt with it. It's his yard, he has a right to do whatever he wanted on it, but my god, the sound of his leaf blower would just drone on forever. My next door neighbor blew a gasket on a Sunday morning and walked over and yelled at him one day. He stopped and did his daily blow in the afternoon. Thank you for watching. Guys, thank you for all the support and the likes. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. See you next time.